from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up today on Ag Day, it's more than just soybeans that could be at stake with the latest tit-for-tat tariff dispute between the U.S. and China.
Sorghum, it's a big issue.
And the argument also has U.S. cherry growers on edge. It's a dilemma in the dairy industry right now.
I'm Michelle Rook. We'll find out what is driving the discussions here among dairy producers at the Central Plains Dairy Expo.
And we'll get you in the zone as you prepare to head to the field to plant. Plus, someone hasn't gotten the message that it's springtime.
Ag Day, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Good morning, I'm Tyne Morgan, and Clinton will be back next week. Well, in the trade dispute between the U.S. and China, the Asian nation has taken an initial step to push back against allegations that it's stealing intellectual property from the U.S. Those accusations led to the U.S. imposing $50 billion in tariffs against Chinese imports, and China retaliated with its own proposed list of targeted items. China filed a formal complaint Thursday with the World Trade Organization. China made a request for consultations at the WTO. Now, consultations give the parties an opportunity to discuss the matter and to find a satisfactory resolution without proceeding further with litigation. Now, after 60 days of consultations have failed to resolve the dispute, the complainant, in this case China, may request adjudication by a panel. So much of the retaliatory tariff concern is with U.S. soybeans since China is its top buyer. However, there are many other crops on the list of 106 items which could see a 25% tariff, like corn, sorghum, cotton, and some beef products. Betsy Gibbon has the story.
Corn, sorghum, and cotton could also face a potential 25% tariff from China. Sorghum may have more to lose than other crops. The U.S. is the leading producer of sorghum globally and is the largest supplier of sorghum to China.
Sorghum, it's a big issue. If we lose that market for sorghum, there isn't an immediately available, readily market we know that we can start selling to and picking up some of that slack.
The national sorghum producers responding to the tariff threat, saying this is not the first time sorghum farmers have faced depressed prices and market uncertainty. That's because China announced it was launching an anti-dumping investigation into the U.S. sorghum industry earlier in the year. The country claiming the U.S. is unloading sorghum at unfairly low prices, something NSP has denied.
But I have to ask you, first off, is the U.S. illegally dumping sorghum into China?
No, we're not.
Slate says there have been multiple stages in the investigation. Now it's at a point where the Chinese could schedule a hearing.
With the trade environment we are right now, who knows if that'll happen or not. Our Ministry of Commerce announced a plenary duty tomorrow, and I wouldn't be terribly surprised.
China is also a big buyer of U.S. cotton. The National Cotton Council saying for the current 2017 crop year, China stands as the second largest export market.
Cotton is the one you want to be concerned about. They're 25% of our export market right now for this marketing year. They were about 17% for a year ago.
Corn also facing a possible tariff. The National Corn Growers Association saying there are no winners in a trade war, only casualties. Slate says very little is shipped to China from the U.S., and it does not look as if it will change anytime soon.
The last corn shipment was probably a few weeks ago. Maybe something else might show up. I'm not too optimistic right now.
Our markets for DDGs and corn are so much more diversified than China that I don't think that really makes a dent in the shorter term.
A game of wait and see when it comes to U.S. officials and their Chinese counterparts. Reporting for Ag Day, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
Thanks, Betsy. Well, the cherry industry in Washington state is also worried its exports to China will be hurt by the growing trade dispute. China is imposing a 15% tariff on an array of fruit, nuts, and sparkling wines in retaliation to the steel and aluminum tariffs. Now, this is the same countermeasure that boosted U.S. pork duties by 25%. China is the top export market for Washington cherries, buying nearly 3 million cases each year. That's a $127 million price tag. China also buys $50 million worth of Washington-grown apples, which are all included in the trade dispute.
For the tariff, 15% tariff, we're already facing a 10% import duty, 13% value-added tax, and now with an additional 15%. So we're looking at a minimum 35% tax on top of on cherries, USA cherries. That is definitely a concern.
Hugh says Northwest cherry growers produced 260,000 tons of cherries last year and 33,000 tons went to China. Now, depending on the season, Chinese consumers pay between $7 to $10 a pound, but the tariffs could hike those prices to $12 a pound. Hugh says when paying that much, Chinese customers may look for other options. Well, dairy producers are facing another low price cycle in the milk market, but that's only part of the battle they're facing to stay in business. Michelle Rook talked to dairy producers and industry officials at the Central Plains Dairy Expo in Sioux Falls to find out how they're managing in 2018 in the midst of a dairy dilemma.
You would expect dairy producers to be talking about low milk prices here at the Central Plains Dairy Expo, but the focus has been more on labor, dairy policy, as well as trade. The president of the South Dakota Dairy Producers says workable immigration policy is critical, and the industry is backing the Ag Act, or H2C program.
The Goodlatte bill is going to be an improvement. It's something that we haven't had for many years.
Passage will be tough in an election year, and it doesn't have a Senate companion bill, but it may be the only legislative option.
It seems to be gaining some strength. I'm not going to tell you that anything's possible to get through this Congress, but I think it has the best chance of anything.
To help with low prices, economist Maren Bolvik believes improvements in the margin protection program in the omnibus will make it effective.
We reduced the premium substantially for the first 5 million pounds, which will help producers to about 24 million pounds because they don't have to protect everything. They can protect just a quarter of their production.
Plus, he says the payments were also accelerated.
Now, every month there can be a new check coming out if the prices are low enough.
Dairy producers at the show were also talking about trade concerns with China and questions about progress with NAFTA renegotiation.
China is always a moving target. They buy in such large volumes, and when they quit buying, it dramatically affects our price.
We've had a lot of issues over the years with Canada, and their Class 7 milk program that they have up there is really making an impact. So we need to make sure we preserve what we have and make sure we fix some of the problems.
Farmers say the key is to avert a trade war or disruptions in an already depressed dairy market. In Sioux Falls, I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
Thanks, Michelle. She says the dairy industry was encouraged by language in the recent omnibus bill that will force FDA to enforce existing laws so imitation and plant-based beverages like almonds and coconut cannot use milk on their label. Well, it's been hot and dry in the plains, and that's caused some unwanted chaos in some areas. Mike Hoffman has details in this morning's Crop Watch.
Good morning, Tyne. Well, more bad news for cotton farmers in Oklahoma who were already struggling with having enough infrastructure to handle their growing crop. The cotton gin in Kiowa County caught fire this week. The gin was engulfed in flames, and early reports say it's a complete loss. Not able to finish ginning last year's harvest. In fact, area farmers say they plan to run at least through June. The latest USDA planting intentions report shows a 16% increase in cotton acres this coming year. And taking a look at the wind speed forecast, starting off pretty windy in the northern and central plains into the Great Lakes. You can see as we head through the day that kind of shifts toward the south a little bit into the south central plains and the eastern Great Lakes. And then as we head into the day tomorrow, things get a little calmer in most of the east, especially later in the day. But boy, does it turn windy in most of the mountain states out west. We'll have your forecast coming up, but first here are some hometown temps.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com.
When Ag Day continues, could there be a protein overload, and what is it doing to prices? Plus, we get in the zone before you head to the field to plant, and it's a sleeping bear who refuses to admit it's spring.
With a uniquely powerful formulation of proven ingredients, Resicor corn herbicide gives you extraordinary power.
Who wants dessert?
At least when it comes to weeds.
In agribusiness, grains recovering a little on Thursday after Wednesday's sharp losses, and livestock also posting in the green. Let's head now to the floor of the CME.
We have finally gotten the much-needed relief rally over the past two sessions.
and this is very encouraging to see. We saw the headlines really break the market and cause that big panic on yesterday's open, and that panic was a great opportunity to buy because we know that China is not a significant player in U.S. beef. We were waiting for that panic and capitulation in the market. Finally got that, and now starting to see short covering encourage higher prices. Now, as far as the soybeans are concerned, we've been bearish soybeans for a while for other reasons outside of China, but China was a gift for us. We took advantage of that dip lower and have reduced and kind of sitting on our hands right now. The market's creeping higher. It's been Oliver Slope with Blue Line Futures from the floor of the CME.
Well, it's a protein overload that's been weighing on livestock prices this year. Clinton Griffiths joins us now with more from the Agribusiness Desk. Clinton?
Here at the Agribusiness Desk today, we have Jim McCormick, Allendale Incorporated. Jim, as we look at the protein sector, we know we've got more hogs and we've got more cattle out on feed. In fact, the cattle number has just been pretty staggering.
Yeah, I mean, we got 1 million more head on feed than we had a year ago. That was due to the drought and I'm putting them in there. But the fact of the matter is we've got a record supply of protein coming at us. So that's what's driving the prices down. If you're a producer of livestock, you know, it's a story you already know. Prices are really cheap right now. What we need to see right now is some demand to kick in. I think part of the weakness has been these fear of the trade wars. Some of our best buyers are Canada and Mexico on the NAFTA side. China, they slapped a tariff or threatened to slap a tariff on the pork, and that's kind of spooked the market a little bit. But if we can get some demand optimism coming in there, the one thing the market has always had a hard time guessing is consumer demand. And one thing we are seeing is the consumers are very optimistic right now. So hopefully the market is digested. Remember, the market's job is to try to project what's going on, not what's happening today. The prices are cheap right now because they're pricing in this record supply of cattle coming at us right now. So hopefully, as the placements start to drop, which we anticipate, even though the supply may be building on the actual supply, the market might say, hey, we've already priced that in there, and we're looking for the next story, which hopefully will be strong demand.
Yeah, as we look at the start of grilling season, we're hoping that's going to kick off here at sometime soon.
Sometime soon.
If the weather ever warms up, right?
Yeah, here in Chicago, we're not off to the best start. It looks like, Easter weekend is going to be one inside, no grilling outside for Easter.
Absolutely.
It looks like.
But as we watch that and expect that to happen, do we know what U.S. demand looks like? Do we expect it to remain pretty good, especially given the job market?
Right now, I would assume it is going to be pretty good right now. I think the U.S. consumer's very confident right now, some of the highest consumer confidence ratings we have. Stock market's corrected, but overall people feel very good about it. The wild card's going to be the export demand. That we need to keep shipping grain outside. We need to keep shipping hogs and beef outside. If we would get into a trade war, that's probably the biggest fear factor I have for our producers right now, is if we would get into a trade war, because if you look at what's happened in the last 30 years, the trade deals we've done have definitely hurt some sectors, but the one sector you cannot deny got helped by was agriculture. Yeah. We ship a lot of our excess supply around the world. We feed the nations of the world. The last thing we want to do is have them use that as a retaliatory tool against our tariffs. So that's something we need to be careful of.
All right, we'll keep an eye on it. Appreciate it. Thank you, Jim. We'll be back with more Ag Day here in just a minute.
To talk to Jim McCormick one-on-one, contact Allendale Incorporated at 815-578-6166 or email Jim at jmccormick@allendale-inc.com. You could win a 2018 John Deere Gator from Valent USA. Visit valentfullyloaded.com to enter.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Time now to check weather. Mike, I know you have that drought monitor. I know the red is screaming at us. But what I'm amazed about is how Mother Nature turned on the moisture in March for the West.
Yeah, for the West, because
the far West.
The La Nina began to weaken, and I think that was enough to bring in some storms. Unfortunately, that didn't translate farther east into the Four Corner region or the far southwestern plains. And the worst areas, as you can see with that exceptional drought, the top level, extreme southwest Kansas, western Oklahoma, most of the panhandle, and the northern panhandle of Texas. So those areas desperately need some moisture. We're also starting to see drier and drier conditions southeastern Georgia, southern portions of South Carolina. Now, going back 4 weeks, you can see how we were already very dry in those areas. It was drier out west, but it was already improving. And over the past 4 weeks, we've seen that improve in the far west. It's gotten worse in the far southeast and worse there in the southwestern plain states. Now, taking a look at things as we've seen today, we have a couple of systems, one moving through the Great Lakes, one diving across the western plains. This is going farther south than originally projected, so a lot of this is going to be rain in the Tennessee Valley. Not as much snow in the Ohio River Valley as thought earlier. Some snow later in the day in the eastern Great Lakes. Stationary front causing a little bit of rain and mountain snow there in the eastern Rockies, but boy, you can see this next system coming in. This is going to be a huge storm system, lots of moisture with it, rain and snow. You can see tomorrow then also in the morning from the Gulf Coast all the way to the mid-Atlantic, some rain with a little bit of snow on the northern fringes of that, and high pressure then builds in, keeping it colder than normal for most of the eastern half of the country as we head into the weekend. Precipitation estimates past 24 hours, some light amounts here and there, but adding in the next 36, our model is showing some heavier thunderstorms parts of Arkansas, southern Mississippi Valley. Also, man, central northern California, especially the higher elevations, just getting a whole bunch of moisture. Now, obviously, a lot of that's going to be in the form of snow. We've already seen some in the plains and the Great Lakes, but the next 36 hours shows a whole bunch, I think a little bit more in the highest elevations out west, but boy, that might be rain pretty high up in the elevations there. High temperatures today, only teens along the Canadian border, 80s in Texas, and then you can see that colder air starts to come south. Single-digit lows tomorrow morning in the far northern plains, still chilly across the entire Corn Belt through the day tomorrow and into the weekend, all because of this big rotating area of low pressure in the jet stream in eastern Canada, bringing these shots of cold air, northern plains, Great Lakes, and the Northeast, and that's going to continue, but there are signs that we try to warm things up at least temporarily here and there. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. Heading to Idaho Falls, Idaho, first of all, cloudy, just a bit of rain around, high temperature of 56. Austin, Texas, mostly cloudy, warm and humid, high of 87. And Lansing, Michigan, windy and chilly. Could be a snow shower or two, high around 37.
Still to come, we're getting in the zone right before planting as we head to Farm Journal College. And while Old Man Winter is giving mixed signs that winter is actually over, one bear may be using it as an excuse to prolong his hibernation. Well, in this week's edition of Farm Journal College, we're getting in the zone. Zone management is really something that Missy Bauer says is growing in importance. Here's Clinton Griffiths.
When we're trying to create these zones, one of the things we're looking at is managing, obviously, soil fertility.
Okay.
So are there issues in the field in different spots that maybe have a potential fertility problem that we want to try to zone out separately so we can pull soil tests here to see actually what it needs? You can see this area we're in right here, the corn is pretty stunted. The soil here is actually a very, very sandy, almost a sugary sand soil. My guess is maybe there's a fertility problem here, maybe it's pH related. We've probably got some micronutrient uptake issues here as well, maybe with sulfur and zinc. But we want to basically capture this area, pull soil tests, see what they come back from the lab, and see if this area is different, say, than it is maybe up on the hill where the corn actually looks a lot better. But coming out to the field, spending some time to try to capture where are these areas, where do we draw basically our lines around this management zone.
And not just relying on that data that, that's been collected over the years, but using this on top of some of those other things to say, okay, when we start layering all this together, then we can really tie this in.
Yeah, because for example, maybe a yield map from last year, the previous year, would have showed this area being where the corn didn't yield as well, or the beans or whatever crop was here before didn't yield as well either. So we can start to use that as this isn't just a one-year issue, this is something we're seeing repeated over time as well.
Thanks, Clinton and Missy. Still to come, if you're using this winter-like weather as an excuse to stay in bed a little longer, you're not alone.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit KubotaUSA.com today.
While some of us are still getting snow, spring has actually sprung. Grass and annual flowers are starting to emerge from their long winter slumber, and that's the case for wildlife too. But there's a bear in Montana who would rather just roll over and get a little more shut-eye. The bear is hibernating in Glacier National Park. Thousands of people are tracking the movements of the sleepy black bear who seems reluctant to leave the tree hollow it used as a den this winter. National Park officials have trained a webcam on the cottonwood tree. The bear was first spotted poking its head out on March 23rd. Since then, the camera has captured the bear yawning, lolling about, and taking brief forays onto the branches before returning to the comfort of its den. You can find the webcam by going to nps.gov and search for Glacier National Park. That's all the time we have this morning. We're glad you tuned in. For all of us at AgDay, I'm Tyne Morgan. Have a great day in farm country.